So, what's it like being on tour? Well, as a sound engineer who's worked in live sound for getting on 15 years now, I've got a fair amount of touring experience. Whilst it's not as extensive as some other people's might be, I've done enough to know what it's like and to be able to touch on the subject a little, hopefully give you an idea whether you're going out on your first tour soon or you've just never toured before, but you're interested in what it's like being on tour. Hopefully, I can give you an idea of what to expect. I've done everything from like your small 100 cap venues, anywhere up to like 2,000 cap, mid-sized club venues, basically touring around the UK and Europe. I've toured on a tour bus once, and the other experience I've had is, all been sort of more DIY, I suppose, like split a van type tours, staying in travel lodges, that sort of thing. It's quite a different experience in some ways doing a split a van type tour as opposed to touring on a tour bus, but there's also a lot of the same things that both of those experiences share. At your more DIY level, quite often being a front of house engineer, where you'll usually also be doing monitors for the band or artist you're working with from front of house. Quite often there's combining of duties where you'll also be tour managing, you might be driving as well. I don't drive myself, so I've never had any experience of doing driving, but I know it can be very full on, having peers in the industry who've done those kind of roles where they're doing multiple jobs on tour. Particularly driving, I think, seeing how tiring it is for drivers, when you're often driving through the night and then you've got early starts, loading into venues early, and then you're working all day and you rinse and repeat every day that's a show day. Yeah, it can be very tiring, even if you're not doing the driving. It can be tiring both physically and mentally. You're going to be doing a lot and you're going to be very busy. Your mind's going to be very busy the whole time. But also you will find yourself quite likely with a lot of downtime and you'll have boredom to contend with. Going on tour, especially if it's your first tour, you might know the people you're going to be working with, but quite often you're going to be getting to know new people, whether it's the band or the artist or the other crew that you're working with. When I've been on tour, it's usually been working with another lighting engineer, monitor engineer, or tour manager or driver. So I have those people to get to know as well as the band or artist. You're going to find that it's a very close-knit environment. You're going to be in each other's pockets all the time. Everybody's going to be different. Some people are going to want to spend a lot of time hanging out in between, when you're actually working on the show. And on off days, people might want to hang out a lot. Other people are going to want more of their own personal space. I think I'm somewhere in the middle where I definitely need time alone, but I do like spending time with other people. So I'm quite happy, especially on off days, to go off and do my own thing or also hang out with other people. A lot of my peers and like family outside of the industry, when you talk about being on tour, naturally they'll sort of think, oh, wow, you've toured Europe or wherever, like, oh, you must have seen a lot of really cool places. The hard reality of it is that you're mostly going to see the inside of venues. And on days off, you're usually going to be tired, especially the further you get into tour. So you're not going to be wanting to spend all day on your feet going around sightseeing whatever city you're in. You're probably going to want to be resting and just having some downtime. That said, there can be great opportunity on off days to go and see some cool places and do some cool things. I've seen, gone and visited some cool museums, just seen some interesting cities and different places. And that can be really fun and can add to the whole experience of being on tour. But also, I think you have to recognize your limits and not push yourself too hard and respect the fact that primarily you're there for a job. You're not there on holiday. You're there to do a job. In the same way, I think, in terms of understanding the people that you're with, you've got to respect people's boundaries and respect that it's important to maintain, I think, a level of professional distance, even if, you might be on a tour with a band or artist that are also your friends. But I think there can be a danger in sort of being too pally with people and not maintaining a level of professional distance. You've got to understand that when it comes to showtime, you've got to take things seriously and treat it as a job, because it is a job, and be professional in the way that you conduct yourself. And that extends to like partying, I guess. It can be part of touring, depending on who you're touring with or what you're like yourself, what your preferences are when it comes to that sort of thing. For myself, like, I like the occasional drink. I don't partake in any sort of substances, but I certainly don't judge anyone that does like to partake in any of those things, or people that like to drink more than I do. I'm not judgmental of that at all. I think if you are someone that likes to partake more in these things, or you're with people that like to partake more in these things, I think it's important to understand that, again, you are there to do a job. And if you're up all night drinking or taking whatever substances and you're not getting any sleep, or you're hungover the next day you've got a job to do, and it's just not sustainable for any length of time whilst you're on the road. Everybody will be different with that, and some people might be able to cope more with drinking every night whilst they're on tour and not suffering the consequences of that too much. But I think for a lot of people, you will suffer for that, and your quality of work will suffer, which, that reflects on you as a professional working. And ultimately, if the sound ends up being rubbish the next night because you're hungover, or you're just overly tired and you can't think straight, that may affect whether or not you get hired again. Takes a long time to build a good reputation, doesn't take very long to destroy that. So it's very important to bear that in mind. To that extent, also taking care of yourself, particularly with your diet. And if you have any particular dietary requirements, making sure that people are aware of that, and that gets advanced to venues wherever you're going to be having any venue catering. It can be difficult to eat healthily whilst on the road, because you are at the mercy of venue catering or restaurants that you're going to on off days, and eating out all the time, where you often might be eating quite rich foods a lot, particularly if you have, a more sensitive gut or whatever. Like, you might find that difficult to cope with. And so I think being mindful of that, like if you need to take any supplements with you on tour, any medication, protein shakes, like whatever it might be that's going to make sure that you are feeling healthy and you're feeling well, I would definitely do that, and I'll prep accordingly. And yeah, just try and not like eat takeaway pizza every night or McDonald's or whatever. Like, try and maintain a level of balance in your diet, get plenty of greens, keep yourself hydrated, that sort of thing. It's really important, because you might be all right for the first week on tour, but if you're touring for any longer than that, if your diet is quite poor, you are going to burn out quicker than if you're taking care of yourself more. So yeah, very important to think about that, and it's quite easy to overlook, I think. And in the same sense, looking after yourself mentally. So understanding that you are going to have some downtime where you won't be hanging out with people all the time necessarily, and you'll need to keep yourself entertained. So whether that's bringing like a handheld gaming device, or if you've got a laptop with you, having some films downloaded prior to going out on the road. So you've got some films to watch, some TV shows, bringing some books with you, whatever it is, like to keep yourself entertained. I quite like listening to podcasts, so I make sure that I don't normally subscribe to like any podcast thing, but I've used Audible before, like just done a subscription, a month or whatever, to have that whilst I'm on tour. And then downloading podcasts offline, because you are going to have to think about data depending on what your mobile data plan is, and your coverage is, particularly when touring overseas. Like, make sure you prep for that in advance and make sure that you're covered to whatever degree you need to be. If you use a lot of data, making sure that you've got an unlimited data plan that's going to be covered when you're roaming. I've messed up in this regard before, and especially, not just for keeping yourself entertained, but for keeping in contact with people. Sure, there was a time when people were on the road and mobile phones and all of that didn't exist. But the fact is, we are living in that age now, and we're used to having that level of communication. And particularly if you've got partners at home or kids, but just family and friends in general, like, you are going to want to stay in touch with them. I'll do like Skype calls or whatever with people. And it's nice to be able to have that, because it can get lonely on the road. So, I think it's important in terms of looking after your mental health, and then also being able to make sure that the people you care about at home, they're okay and they're well. So you have that peace of mind in that sense. Make sure you take an appropriate amount of clothes with you, but don't overpack in that regard. I'd say take like a week's worth of clothes with you. Yeah, just make sure you stay on top of washing those clothes. I wouldn't rely on venue washing machines, because you're not going to have time during showtime to take care of that. Like, unless you've got a good TM who has enough free time to manage laundry for people, which often they're not going to, because they're going to be busy fulfilling their duties. The length of your typical wash cycle. Also, venue washing machines vary. Sometimes you get really crap ones that don't work properly. So I would just go on your off days to a laundry place and just pay to get your clothes washed. Or if you are doing a split van tour where you're staying in travel lodges or places like that, then you can maybe make use of the washing facilities there. Showering. If you're on a tour bus, you're going to be showering in venues. On off days, you'll probably have hotels booked out where you can go and shower. Be respectful and mindful of the artists that you're touring with. They take precedence. They are the ones that are going on stage. They're going to need to shower before they go on stage. Whilst you're loading in, setting up, they can go and get settled into the dressing room and go and get showered, do what they need to do. You're probably going to be showering post-show, where you won't have a lot of time, and depending on the size of your crew, it's going to be a very quick, like 2-minute shower. Get yourself washed, get out. There's not time, for extensive, beauty routines or whatever. Like, I've got a shaved head, like that helps. But if you need to have time to be blow drying your hair, styling your hair, like that sort of thing, there's not going to be a whole lot of time for that, and no one really cares what you look like. But be prepared for that. If you are somebody who likes to spend more time in the bathroom, you're not really going to have that luxury. Being on a tour bus as well, there's only one toilet and you can't do number twos in there, so be mindful of that as well. Particularly if your diet isn't great and, say you're having some stomach trouble, it does happen. And this is where taking care of yourself is important. But yeah, you've got to wait until you get into venues to go and do number twos. So yeah, that is something to prepare yourself for. I suppose those are some of the lifestyle things, but in terms of what it's actually like on show days, you're mostly going to see the inside of venues. You're going to turn up on your tour bus or in your van, unload the van or the trailer, whatever it is, load in your gear, set up on stage, do your sound check, and then you'll have a bit of downtime pre-show, and then you do the show, you pack down, you load out, you get back in the bus or the van, and you drive off to the next venue. You'll be doing a lot of your traveling throughout the night, so if you're not doing the driving, that will usually be whilst you're sleeping. If you're sleeping in the van, obviously if you're sleeping in hotels, it's going to be different. But yeah, if you're sleeping in the van or you're sleeping on a bus, that's something to get used to. It's a different experience sleeping on a tour bus whilst it's moving on the road throughout the night. Some people get along with that fine, other people don't. I quite like it. I find it quite soothing, but some people don't. So, also, yeah, you're going to be in a very small bunk, either below somebody or above somebody on a tour bus. If you're staying in hotels, you'll quite often on a smaller level where it's a little bit more DIY, there's not a ton of budget. You'll be sharing rooms with people, so you won't have a whole lot of privacy. You might have to deal with other people snoring. It will be a lot of fun on show days, but there can also be a lot of pressure. You're going to have to always be ready to think on your feet and think quickly and find solutions for stuff that you wouldn't expect to go wrong, basically, whether it's you're dealing with some power issues, particularly when you're traveling, to different regions using different power to what you're used to, where you might have like earthing issues, stuff like that to deal with. Being prepared for equipment breaking, it does happens more than you think. If it happens, during sound check or before showtime at any point, being able to fix things if you can, or having spares and being able to get stuff up, back and running quickly. So, always being prepared for any kind of eventuality. If something happens mid-show, knowing what to do. Often, you will encounter a situation that you've never experienced before. So you just got to be prepared to deal with that level of pressure and not crumble under that level of pressure. Basically, communicating with your band or artist, making sure that they feel comfortable, making sure that all the tech stuff kind of moves out of the way for them and they can focus just on being a musician and a performer and putting on a great show and not having to worry about any of the tech stuff. So don't burden them with any kind of tech issues. Discuss that amongst your crew, but don't burden the artist with it. Let them just do their thing and do their job and you do yours. Don't kind of isolate yourself from the musicians, because it's all a shared experience, and if there's something that goes wrong but you get through it and you can kind of have a laugh about it after the show, great. But just make sure that you don't kind of stress anyone out with any sort of tech issues, and try to keep a level head about those kind of things yourself. Don't make it overly apparent when you are stressed and dealing with pressure. Try to maintain a level of composure and professionalism. It can be really fun doing shows night after night. I find actually like it's a very different experience to doing one-off shows with, bands you've not heard before or whatever, where the show kind of happens in its moment and then the show's done and, you move on to the next gig or whatever. On tour with a band or artist, you get to really like craft a whole experience. And the further you get into a tour, the more you're going to like be really, particularly if you're touring with your own consoles and your own mic package and stuff, where you've got that level of consistency to things, it allows you to like really dive into the minutiae more, and really just kind of work on crafting that show. And then, just having fun with the differences. Every performance each night is going to be different and unique in its own way. You're going to know all the songs inside out, especially when you're kind of deep into a tour, you're going to know those songs really well, but that kind of gives you a different perspective and appreciation for the subtle differences in a show. The people coming to that show, they're not going to have seen the show before, and so it's going to be a unique experience for them in that sense. But for you've seen the same set list night after night, but you get to see just the little differences in the performance, and that can be really fun. And then, in terms of crafting your mix, like you can have fun with trying some different stuff with effects or trying to deal with different problems with EQ or compression or whatever, and just make things sound as good as they can possibly be. And you kind of don't get that opportunity, that same level of opportunity with one-off shows that you do on tour, where, you really get to build on that sound night after night, so that hopefully by the end of the tour it's sounding as good as it can possibly sound. And there can be a great level of satisfaction in that, knowing that you've really like crafted that experience, and you've continued to like one up yourself each night. So don't get complacent, just have fun with it. And it can be tempting when you're touring with digital consoles and you've got the same kind of setup every night to just pull up the faders, unmute things, and oh, it sounds good, so I can kind of sit back, enjoy the show, which is great in some ways, but try and challenge yourself and keep things fresh and interesting. That can be a lot of fun. So just have fun with it and enjoy the ride. I don't know, you just get to appreciate an artist's show at a kind of deeper level because you're seeing it night in and night out. I find that a lot of fun, and just really kind of learning a set inside out, and whether it's like you're doing stuff with different effects or, just really perfecting your mix, like having the opportunity to do that, where you can just really have fun with it once you know the songs and the set inside out. At the same time, you've always got to be on your toes. You never know when something's going to go wrong. An instrument like a guitar breaking, drummer goes through the kick drum head when you're like 15 shows deep into a tour. There are moments when, you're a bit mentally tired and it's hard to stay on your toes, but yeah, just trying to keep your energy up and trying to keep locked into things and just being aware, of what's going on at all times, making sure that, an artist knows when sound check's going to be, how long they've got, keeping sound check rolling along nicely, understanding when you need to spend more time on things, but also, not letting things overrun where then you're going to be opening late for the show or, whatever it might be. If you really need to do that, then sure, that's what you need to do, but it's just being mindful of these things. And then when it comes to showtime, communicating to artists, and making sure that the things run smoothly and that they feel comfortable. You want them to almost feel like royalty. They are the star of the show and they should be treated as such. So to that effect, you have to put the artist's needs above yours, and that can be tough at times. This has probably covered a lot of points. I mean, there's so much that I could talk about. If you have any particular questions, sound out in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful, and hopefully it wasn't too rambly. I always find it difficult sort of keeping things on track and having keeping things concise, because I do most stuff just kind of train of thought. I'll have a general outline of what I want to say, but I don't script things. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Give it a like if you did, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here and you haven't subscribed already. That helps me out a lot, and I'll see you guys again in the next video.